Imagine for a moment, the Titanic sinking not in 1912 but today. Picture drones quietly circling overhead, passengers reaching for their smartphones, live streaming the confusion as it unfolds. Tweets and videos would spread in real time with the world watching every moment. Radar systems that today can warn ships of objects dozens of miles away might have caught the iceberg before disaster struck. Or would they? What if those live streams could actually save lives? It's a haunting thought, especially when we remember how quickly news travels now compared to a century ago. Before we imagine this modern scenario, let's quietly step back to that cold April night in 1912 and see what really happened. The story of the Titanic's final hours is one of quiet confidence giving way to confusion and fear. On that clear April night in 1912, the ship moved steadily through calm waters, its passengers enjoying the comfort and luxury that had come to define the voyage. The air was cold, but the mood on board was relaxed. No one suspected that disaster was approaching. As the hours passed, small choices and overlooked warnings quietly set the stage for what would come. Captain Smith kept the ship moving at about 22 knots, even though reports of icebergs had come in from other vessels. The radio operators, busy with a steady stream of passenger telegrams, sometimes missed or set aside safety messages. There was no Radio Act yet, so personal messages could take priority over urgent alerts. This meant that warnings about ice ahead did not always reach those who needed them. Up in the crow's nest, the lookouts watched the dark horizon without binoculars. The keys to the binoculars locker had been taken off the ship by Second Officer David Blair before departure, an odd detail, made more memorable by the fact that those keys were later auctioned off in 2007. Without them, spotting a looming iceberg on a moonless night was almost impossible. When the iceberg finally appeared, it was just a shadow. There was no time to turn the ship aside. The collision itself was quiet, a scraping sound along the starboard side. Many passengers barely noticed at first. Some felt a faint jolt, while others heard a muffled noise. Still, the ship kept its lights and heat, which gave a false sense of safety. For a while, some people hesitated to leave their cabins. The Titanic was supposed to be unsinkable, and that belief lingered. As water began to fill the lower compartments, the crew started to prepare the lifeboats. There were only 20 lifeboats, far too few for all the people on board. Some boats were launched half empty, either because the crew worried that the davits couldn't hold the weight, or because they thought help was coming soon. Families were separated in the confusion, and many men were told to stand back as women and children were given priority. The orchestra played quietly as panic grew, their music a calm background to the rising fear. Distress calls were sent by wireless operators using both CQD and SOS signals, but the response was slow. The nearest hope, the Carpathia, was more than 50 miles away and took about 4 hours to reach the site. Survivors in lifeboats and those clinging to wreckage waited in the cold, listening to the fading cries of others in the water. The loss was staggering, over 1,500 lives. The empty lifeboats, the missed warnings, and the slow rescue became symbols of what went wrong. Looking back, it's natural to wonder, but could any of these mistakes be prevented now? Let's take a quiet look at how things might unfold if a ship like the Titanic faced disaster in our own time. Today's vessels are surrounded by layers of technology that would have seemed impossible in 1912. Modern ships use X-band radar and scanners with rotating antennas sending out microwaves to detect objects, even in thick fog. These systems can spot icebergs dozens of miles away, giving crews time to adjust their course. Alongside radar, international conventions like SOLAS require ships to maintain a continuous watch and use electronic chart displays. So any route correction happens quickly and with careful oversight. It's a far cry from the days when a lookout's eyesight was the only defense. Even so, technology is only part of the story. Human judgment still matters. There are protocols for navigation, and officers are trained to follow them, but mistakes can still happen. If something did go wrong, the experience for passengers would be very different. Nearly everyone carries a smartphone, ready to record and share anything unusual. A sudden jolt or an unexpected announcement would be captured and streamed within moments. Videos would appear on social media almost instantly, and the world would watch the story unfold in real time. We've seen this before. When the Costa Concordia ran aground in 2012, images and hashtags spread quickly, shaping public reaction and increasing demands for answers while the rescue was still ongoing. Communication in a crisis is no longer limited to the ship's radio. Today, distress signals are sent out through official emergency beacons called EPIRBs, which broadcast a ship's location to rescue services. Smartphones can help by sharing GPS data, but EPIRBs remain the backbone of maritime emergency response. Rescue operations now include helicopters and nearby vessels, often arriving within hours. Modern shipping lanes are more closely monitored, and coordination between ships is routine, so help is rarely far away. This speed and organization make survival much more likely than it was in the past. But technology doesn't just change rescue efforts, it changes how the world reacts. News of a disaster would reach every corner of the globe in minutes. Raw footage and personal stories would fill timelines, making the event feel immediate and personal. The scrutiny would be intense, and companies would face public questions before official statements could be made. Still, not every risk has vanished. Ships now travel through icy waters in the Arctic and Antarctic, where even advanced radar and mapping can't prevent every accident. Remote locations bring their own challenges, and sometimes help still takes time to arrive. Modern steel and better training have reduced the chance of catastrophic failure, but the sea always holds some surprises. Financial and legal responses to maritime disasters have changed as much as the ships themselves. In 1912, the Titanic's insurance coverage stood at £1 million, about £115 million today. The premium was set at just 0.75%, a quiet sign of how much faith insurers placed in the ship's reputation for safety. When the unthinkable happened, more than 60 London insurers shared the burden, but the payouts to families were modest. Today, the network of financial protections is far more intricate. Modern maritime insurance covers not only the ship itself, but also the people on board, with clear pathways for passengers to claim compensation for lost belongings, injuries, or emotional trauma. In some places like the United States, there's no cap on an operator's liability. U.S. law may even award punitive damages if negligence is proven. Legal standards have also moved forward. Back in 1912, maritime law was outdated and didn't offer much protection to passengers or their families. Now, investigations and court cases are expected after any large-scale accident. The Costa Concordia disaster in 2012 made this clear. The ship carried more than twice as many people as the Titanic, but far fewer lives were lost, 32 in total. In the aftermath, operators faced not only criminal charges, but also multi-million euro settlements with victims and their families. These legal developments show how much more is demanded of companies today, both in how they prevent disasters and how they respond when things go wrong. The way people experience and process a tragedy like this has changed too. In 1912, news traveled slowly, and early reports were often wrong, sometimes giving families false hope. Now, information spreads instantly. Passengers would share videos and updates as events unfolded, and the world would watch together. This immediacy can be a double-edged sword. Survivors might find their stories widely shared before they have time to process what happened, and the collective response online could quickly turn to outrage or calls for change. At the same time, this kind of attention might push authorities and companies to act more quickly and transparently than ever before. Even with all these advances, the emotional toll remains. Whether in 1912 or today, the shock and grief of a maritime disaster are profound. What has changed is the way that grief is witnessed and responded to. No longer isolated, but part of a shared experience that stretches across the globe. Could a modern insurer even survive the financial storm of a full-scale loss? These are the questions that linger as we look at how far we've come, and how the lessons of the past still echo in the choices we make now. Looking at the Titanic's legacy, we see how tragedy can quietly push safety forward. The disaster led to the Solace Convention, requiring enough lifeboats for all, and inspired the 1914 Radio Act, which mandated 24-hour radio watch on passenger ships. These changes reshaped how ships operate and how crews respond to danger, making sea travel safer for millions. Yet, risks remain. Human error still challenges technology, And as ships venture into remote places like the Arctic, new hazards emerge. These modern cruise routes are now a front line for testing the next generation of safety measures. If this exploration gave you new insights into maritime safety's evolution, consider subscribing for more calm journeys into history's mysteries.